market rate.
Madam Chair, Mr. Domena, I've seen the pictures. I remember this last year. I think I asked you the same questions. Again, this is a jurisdictional issue, and then you have other legal due process issues. If the homeowners association has someone that's parking their car on the street, if it's a city street, how is that enforced with regard? Do they get a little HOA ticket, and then the HOA comes putting a lien on their home if they don't pay the ticket, or how does that work?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Antonori, great question. Apparently there are some HOAs where there's a nuisance factor. It is against the law now for 5 years.
Mr. Antonori. Mr. Chairman, just a minute. I asked that because I've got an email from an individual that states that he was cited by his HOA. He refused to pay. They hired an attorney who then sent him a letter telling him to pay. He sent the letter, I guess, I'm not going to repeat the language here, but he basically told the attorney he wasn't going to pay. And then they then put a lien on his home for the attorney fees associated with that HOA, taking him to court to collect a fine for his parking violation. Have you heard of anything like that, or HOAs doing that?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Antonori, are there HOAs doing that? Maybe a different question. We think there are as many as 15,000 plus HOAs. Are they doing that legally? No.
May not be attaching the fine, but they're taking these guys to court, and then they're hitting them with the attorney's fees and liening their property. And this guy said it was several $1,000s by the time he was done in attorney's fees, which again is now on his property.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and respectfully, Representative Antonori, legislating by anecdote is a challenge. What we do is try to bring you the facts. If you choose, redact it, send it my way, and we will have a response for you from counsel as to whether what's been done is accurate and sustainable.
All right, well, Madam Chair, what I'm getting at, if you have a city street and you have parking enforced by the city, the guy gets a parking ticket, he goes down to the city court and he fights his little ticket in court, and the worst thing that can happen is he loses his license, gets suspended or something along those lines. There's no lien on his property. There's no issues with regard to his property. If you have an HOA enforcing the parking, and that's, I think, the crux of this bill, is if you have a city-owned street, and the picture aside that you sent me, I don't see what's wrong with the HOA going to the city and saying, hey, our street's too narrow, put no parking signs up on our street, and then if there's somebody that parks there in a no parking zone, have the city, whether, like in Tucson, we got Parkwise, or a police officer come out and write the guy a parking ticket. Okay, why are we, and I think that's where I think the legislation is going, are we giving pseudo-government entities the authority to impose civil action against people for parking on a public street?
And Madam Chairman.
Again, Chairman Novus, it's nice to see you. I've been here before talking about this bill. I didn't really prepare anything to say today. I thought I would wait until after I heard what Mr. Domena had to say, because he always has some interesting stories. One of the things that he really hit on was the contractual obligation of the homeowners in the HOA. At the same time, he's pushing a bill that he also pushed last year to allow residents to amend those CC&Rs. He's a great lobbyist, but he's really, really bad at math, because 2/3 of 50% is not the majority. It's 33%, which means he's pushing a bill that would allow 33 people to change the contract for the remaining 67 that don't agree with it. So I'll be here if he pushes that bill, fighting against that too. The picture that he sent around, we've talked about this before, and it's the cornerstone of my advocacy for this bill to be passed. If I lived on a street that was public, and it can happen in older neighborhoods, if it's 16 feet wide and there's a car parked in front of my house and I'm afraid that the ambulance can't come save me, if I call my HOA, they can't move it. It sits there. That is the problem with maintaining this false sense of security with these people that live in these HOAs. It doesn't work. We have been over the issue time and time again with safety. These HOAs have no authority to move a car, to ticket a car. They do it, and they do lien homes, and they do sue these people. And like Mr. Antonori said, a big trick that they've come to understand since the liening power has been legislated, that the lawyers send a letter, and it says, hey, you owe us $500, and by the way, I tacked on $125 for 30 minutes to write the letter. They can lien for the $125, they can't lien for the $500. Another trick that they've come upon, and I actually brought copies, I thought you guys would find this extremely interesting. This is a newsletter that Scott Carpenter sent out last year to HOA management companies. They in turn sent it to board members. I was on my board. I thought I could change things. In the middle of the recession last year, Mr. Carpenter, who has also come down to lobby against this bill, had the genius idea that since people were financially strapped and suffering, it would be a great idea for HOAs to take a $25 fine and turn it into a $250 fine. He said, hey, if your trash can is worth $25 at the curb, why not make it $250 or $500? Make these people really suffer to force them or scare them into compliance. This man financially benefits by this because Mr. DeMetta apparently isn't aware of all of the Title 33 issues that we deal with on a daily basis with these HOAs. But once they hit a $1,200 limit, they can lien your house, and they do. So the higher these fines become, the sooner they can take your house or lien it. They can't take your house, but they can lien it, and they do. It's a big, big problem. With all due respect to Mr. DeMetta's opinion, there are contracts entered into every day that aren't legal. I can enter into a contract to sell my daughter, but it's not legal. And I have yet to see a contract or a CC&R that says, you're not allowed to shop at Bashas, and it's enforceable. You're not allowed to park on this public street, and it's enforceable. I've not even seen a CC&R that says you're not allowed to park on a public street. They're extremely vague, and they usually say something like HOA property. He also talked about his lack of knowledge in the area of how these things are created. I work for a developer, I work for a builder. I've designed several subdivisions in the Valley. And it is the government that requires these developers to create these HOAs. It's not the home builder, it's the original property owner that develops it. The reason that they do this is, just as Rep. Nichols said, they are trying to transfer the responsibility of maintenance costs from the city to the HOA. They do this great trick where they put the right-of-way right behind the curb or the sidewalk. Sidewalk and streets are safety issues, they can't leave that to the neighbors. They take that landscaping behind the sidewalk becomes HOA private property. So the landscaping on a lot of these major thoroughfares is actually owned by the HOA. They're responsible for watering it and maintaining it. It's a direct tax on the people that live there to do a job that the city does in other parts of town where there aren't HOAs. And I agree with Rep. Chapin that it's a 90-10 issue. I have not developed anything in any city in the Valley that doesn't require an HOA, and I can tell you that developers would be all over getting rid of them because it's a very costly legal process for us to go through to do it, and it could be very easily handled with zoning issues. And like I said before, HOAs have no regulatory authority. They cannot remove cars. They can't even make you change the paint color on your house without taking you to court. A zoning board can. They can pull your C of O if they've got a problem with what's going on in your neighborhood. I really hope we get this bill passed this year. This is my 4th year here. Every year I get 100 new phone calls, and it's terrible. And I'm taking a lot of my own personal time and money to help these people understand the laws that exist and help them fight their boards. The stories I hear are reprehensible. There's another person here that would like to speak. His name is Kurt Anderson. He had trouble figuring out the computer system outside. If you guys would allow him.
Certainly, we've had 2 speakers.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
Are there any questions for Melissa? Seeing none, thank you.